Good evening, Mr. Narayanan.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Till now, okay. I hope everything is okay with you.
I'm fine. Yeah, doing well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for accepting our invitation.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Narayan, our students are in the process of joining, so I would request you to bear with us for a few moments.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so good to go. 5 o'clock. Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome from Calcutta Business School. I am Chandrajit Mitra, welcoming the luminaries to begin with the guest speaker, Mr. Narayan Ramaswamy, Mr. Saurav Ghosh, our senior advisor of the group, our Secretary General, Mrs. Bratati Bhattacharya, our principal in charge, Professor Don, our teachers, students, and every other member. Sikshatan Foundation, which is celebrating 100 years of educational excellence. Sikshatan Foundation is the apex body which establishes, administers, and manages the following educational institutions. The group has more than 10,000 students and 500 staff members. Marwari Balika Vidyalaya, which was established in 1920, is called MBV. After that, it was Sri Sikshatan School, which was established in 1954, followed by the Sri Sikshatan College in 1955, and then came the Calcutta Business School, established in 2008. Realizing that only education could change the fate of a woman, and to further popularize the education of young girls, a group of enlightened luminaries inaugurated a small but progressive school in the year 1920, which I have already mentioned earlier in the order. Buildings donated by late Sri J.K. Birla and his younger brother, late Sri G.D. Birla, the doyen amongst them, along with a social worker, late Sri Sitaram Seksaria, to provide quality education. The trustees of the society started a residential management institution styled as Calcutta Business School under the stewardship of Mr. S.K. Birla, who is also the president of the Society Sikshatan Foundation. And there are also other eminent industrialists very closely associated as trustees like Mr. Siddhartha Birla, the vice president of the trust, and a few other eminent trustees are Mr. G.K. Khaitan, Mr. G.P. Goenka, Mr. R.S. Goenka, Mr. Arun Saraf, Mr. Pavan Poddar, and Mr. Raghu Reddy. Calcutta Business School is one of the top AICTE approved autonomous management institute in the Eastern region. It was established in 2008, offering a 2-year full-fledged, full-time postgraduate diploma management and management development programs. This business school, modeled on the top-ranking business schools of the country, located in a sprawling 15-acre residential, eco-friendly and smart campus on the outskirts of Calcutta. Several activities are conducted throughout the year which transform and empower the students. Mrs. Brutati Bhattacharya is the First Lady Secretary General, and Sri Saurabh Ghosh is the advisor of the group. And Mr. G.K. Khaitan is the chairman of the core committee of CBS. The journey continues as we march together to empower and transform all our resources. So let me now introduce our guest speaker of the evening, Mr. Narayan Ramaswamy. He is the Office Management Partner, Kolkata, and National Lead for Education and Skill Development Sector. Mr. Narayan has been in the expert committees of Ministry of Education in India, New Education Policy, EQUIP 5-year Vision Plan for Higher Education, Power Committee for Technology in Education. He is a member of the Standing Committee for National Council for Teacher Education. He is also a part of various committees for education and skill development in the leading industry forums in India. He is an acknowledged speaker in various forums and writes articles and columns regularly in popular newspapers and magazines in India. Let me also introduce now our moderator for the evening, our own Professor Siddhartha Sengupta. Professor Sengupta has over 3 decades of experience, both as a professor and a practitioner in the field of operations management and supply chain management. He holds a BE in mechanical engineering and an ME in production engineering from Jadavpur University, Kolkata, which he followed up with an area-specific advanced management training on operations management from IIM Bangalore. Prior to entering academia, Professor Sengupta brings with him an experience of over 27 years with organizations such as Videocon Industries as the head supply chain management and head factory operations. Professor Sengupta has co-authored publications and has published and presented papers at prestigious conferences both nationally and internationally. Professor Sengupta is presently the professor in the area of decision sciences, operations management, and information systems at Calcutta Business School. So I welcome both the speaker as well as the moderator to take forward this session, and welcome once again to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitra. Thanks for your kind words. I'm really excited to be part of this August gathering here, and I'll share my experiences as we go. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I request Professor Sengupta to moderate the session.
Professor, you are on mute, just in case.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So
Absolutely.
good evening to all of you, our speaker, our Secretary General, Dr. Bhattacharya, our advisor, Mr. Saurabh Ghosh, and all my fellow students who are here. Mr. Narayan, we would like to hear from you regarding your about consulting as a practice. So I crossed roads with what you call the Pacific Rim of Singapore, and also with Booz Allen Hamilton when I was working with Philips, and they were appointed our advisors or consultants for the supply chain management of the distribution in the country, and specifically to India. So that's my interaction with the consulting practice as such, and wherein I had met quite a lot of consultants from these two companies. And now talking about, let us hear something about what is consulting as practice and why we need to go to consultants. Or I just put it, what is consulting as a practice?
Wow. Wonderful, Professor. Thank you so much. That is such a pertinent question. And, you know, there is always this awe and a bit of surprise why year on year in B schools, management consulting has been a sought after profession. You know, it could be, you know, the top B schools, the Ivy League. It could be the one school that was started yesterday. But management consulting has been a profession that B school grads, as they are fondly called, which are management professionals, have a liking to. Now, it all started many years back. And Arthur D. Little is kind of credited with starting management consulting as a profession, where the simple point was the management of a corporate, of a commercial entity, of a social enterprise, civil services, government, who are vested with certain responsibilities and they get on to their day-to-day work. Could we find bright professionals who can look at this from outside, who can kind of come up with ideas and solutions for some of their issues, which would be difficult for somebody who's been inside the profession, inside the industry, inside the civil society to look at. So it all started by getting this, if I can use the word, a wise old man, not necessarily old always, a wise man or a woman for that matter, who can come and say, okay, you've been doing this for long. Did you consider this? Do you know where things are heading? So it is to augment and help the management team of any of these enterprises that management consulting was formed. So the glamour is, as management consultants, you always work with the top tier of any organization, and the likelihood of your ideas and suggestions getting executed and changing the course of the enterprise is very high. And that's the reason why you find professionals aspiring to be management consultants. And that is the reason why enterprises, I use the word enterprise in a generic sense, are looking at these people who can bring in perspectives that they couldn't think. They might have been in the system for 20 years, 30 years or more. But it's very difficult for somebody who's within the system to think outside the box. And that is where management professionals or management consultants come from.
Right. Okay. Fine. I mean, see, the thing is, apart from management consulting, there's other side of consulting, like the technical consulting. Particularly, I have had working experience with the Fulgian group. You know, they are with DCPS. That's one part. But what we are really looking at today to understand from you is the management consulting part, and if keeping ourselves confined to management consulting, just tell us which are the areas particularly consultants where the consultants are working in, which areas maybe KPMG is providing consulting.
I can elaborate. Let me take a shot at it. So once upon a time, management consulting meant what is now called as strategy consulting. So it just meant, and there are a lot of theories in that, like, you know, there is, business process re-engineering, which looked at, the business right ab initio and looked at what are the various ways you can do things, look at strategically what are the alternatives and things of that kind, which is largely termed under strategy consulting, which is to look at the very core of existence of a business and look at what are the additional stuff that you can do, which is usually called as strategy consulting, which exists even today. But what has happened over a period of time is, since the time management consulting as a profession started, a lot of people from the so-called consulting fraternity have started to move into industry. And they've started bringing in those kind of perspectives, the tools, the techniques, the approaches that management consultants used to do. So now, as we speak, management consulting is spread across multiple domains. It is not just the hardcore strategic consulting, but it is more, can you make it happen? Most of our clients today say, that's fine, you gave a bright new idea, but you know what? The idea means nothing to me because I have to live in the same organization, in the same external environment, with the same processes, with the same systems. How do I realize whatever you're given as an idea? So what happened? Management consultants slowly started to get into the area of making it happen. So usually it starts with strategy consulting, and then they say, can you fix the processes for me? Looks like it is haphazard. Looks like we are redundant. Looks like we're wasting a lot of time, or there are inefficiencies. Can you do some process fixes? Then over a period of time, systems became very important. In fact, many years back, I started my career as a technology consultant. That became important because technology singularly defined whether the system, whether your enterprise is successful or not. Then there are many consultants who say that's all fine, but if your organization structure is not right, if you have not put the right people in right place, if you have not told people what are their roles and responsibilities, what good is process and system? So fix the people part of it. That started happening. Then, there is also another field where we said, I want to grow. If I want to grow, I need to look at who else can I partner with? Can I buy out somebody? Can I raise money? So there was a branch of consulting that also went into what is called as largely under corporate finance and related areas, where you said, can you look at mergers and acquisitions? Can I look at growth? As things became complex, compliance became very important. And compliance became very complex as well. Today, if you are in the financial services, if you want to understand all those regulations where multiple regulators are like having, you would take a lifetime to understand them. So compliance became one of the areas where they said that's all fine. So largely, I would put consulting in three buckets. One is efficiency enhancement, second is compliance, and third is growth. So normally, consultants work in one of these three domains. Can I preserve what I'm having through compliance? Can I improve upon what I'm doing? Can I find more areas? So consultants come in these three areas, and they manifest in terms of process, in terms of people, in terms of technology, in terms of, like I said, raising funds and a whole bunch of stuff. The latest in that is the digital revolution that is happening. Today, when we are advising clients, if we are not able to tell them how do they harness the digital technologies, called by various names, Industry 4.0, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, extreme automation, cloud computing, whole bunch of stuff that comes under the larger digital technologies. If your consultant is not able to advise you on how do you make things happen far better in any of these three areas, then you've not done your job. So the latest flavor, I would say, is digital technologies and how do you leverage digital technologies for your enterprise. And I can go on, but just to give you a flavor of how management consulting is no more the straight-jacketed strategic consulting as one would imagine. A lot of my young friends in the team here, normally there is a glamour about management consulting as that, you'll go and sit with the CEO and talk to him about how his or her business should be doubled. Well, yes, that is also there, but that's not all. There's a lot of hard work in terms of making it happen, which is interesting, incidentally.
Absolutely. Now, on part of the student, I also feel like a student today. As a student, if I ask you what I need to do to be a consultant in a company like KPMG or similar other 5 ones that we have?
I like this. This is something that people ask me many a time. Wherever I go, this has been one of these questions. You know what? To be honest, to be a management consultant, all you need, if I say that it looks rather simple and many people dismiss, and then I'll explain why I say this. All you need is common sense. Why am I saying that? So normally, imagine, I mean, I'll also give you an interesting anecdote that happened early on in my career. Now I'm much older. This happened about 20 years back. So I went into this firm, young consultant, I mean, learned a lot of stuff, and I wanted to, implement everything that I've learned. And I got this great opportunity to be in this financial services firm. And the CEO just introduced to his one down, an elderly gentleman. So who called me in and said, okay, where do you come from? I am great, whatever. And then he asked me this, question that many consultants dread. What is your age? So I did say, this is my age. And then he said, wow, the year you were born is the year I joined this firm. So what he essentially meant, and a subtle message he gave me was, since you existed in this world, I've been working here, and you've come and trying to tell me, wow, I should do my business, right? So it's not the domain knowledge. It's not the deep domain knowledge that makes you a good consultant. More often than not, your clients are far more experienced than you are. More often, 100% of the time, they are more experienced. So what does it take you to become a good consultant? It takes that little additional for you to see what your clients don't see. So I categorize this in 3 parts, what a good consultant should have. Apart from, of course, I'm not for a moment belittling the intelligence part, the hard work part, the CGPA that we are looking, because they are surrogates actually. If I want to find somebody who needs to be a management consultant, what is a surrogate? A good surrogate is how well have you performed in your academics. A good surrogate is how well-rounded you've been in your campus and outside. So I'm not taking away those nice little things that we kind of come and look for. But over and above that, a good consultants and those who have succeeded in management consultings, if I can categorize, have 3 important characteristics. One is what I call curiosity. A management consultant is always learning. A good management consultant takes away from every single meeting he or she has. Trust me, today we don't even have the luxury that we had 20 years back of reading up a lot of stuff and other things. And today, there's a big, the information asymmetry that was there 20 years back. Like, we had access to a lot of databases, we had access to a lot of knowledge repository, gone. Today, you know what, there are Google universities and WhatsApp universities that are far better teachers. And so it's not the content, it is how you learn in every single interaction. So curiosity or this ability to learn, come up the learning curve very fast is very important. That is one. The second characteristic I think is very important is what I call as intent. What is your attitude? Management consulting can be terribly tiring. More often than not, in order to, you might be suddenly put in a situation where you are asked to decide for the CEO. At the same time, you might also be put in a situation where you're collecting data for 30 full days from a factory that is in the back of beyond. What is your attitude? Can you be a team player when required? Can you rise up to be a leader when required? Can you provide that extra additional hands when required? So it's not as if all those, who've been having this big idea that I will do only these things do not succeed when they are a consultant. So consultant is rounded because he or she is able to take up multiple roles with the same attitude, with the perseverance, with the patience that is required. And the third and the most important part of consulting is what I call as delivery or communication. And that is the most important part. As important as much as the research part, as important as your attitude, or even more important is how do you deliver that? more often than not, you find, and this is common across, right? I mean, you hear many stories, and I don't deny that, you know, people saying, oh, consultants come, take your watch and tell you the time. But the point that is hidden there is somebody had the watch and couldn't say the time. And they needed somebody to actually come. The communication part, the unwrapping of what is hidden is very important. So sometimes it's written communication, sometimes it's oral communication, and the famous elevator pitch. I don't know if any of you know. And one of the trainings that we give is, suppose, assuming that you've been working on a particular assignment for many, many months, and you have this opportunity to be with the CEO in the elevator for 2 minutes. Can you convey what you've been doing and what you found? Or you might be put for an 8-hour marathon session where you're supposed to explain the details of how things happen. How do you do it? So communication. So, I mean, I put it CID, the content, which is your curiosity, your learning, the intent, and the delivery. All three are important.
Yeah. So, it's really gone beyond what I asked you. I mean, the next question that I wanted to ask you, what are the skill sets required? But I believe it's more the attitude and the acumen for research, and of course, the most important, as you said, the delivery, very important. But while once you have that, I mean, possibly you'll be acquiring the required skill sets in that process, whatever is required to be a good consultant.
Absolutely. And it keeps changing also, Professor. Like, you know, what was so important 20 years back?
Yeah.
So much important. 20 years back, if you know the right database, if you know where to search, you are a great consultant. Today, my 12-year-old son does it better than I do. So that part suddenly has become very redundant. So what I'm saying is the skill sets keeps changing, and your ability to learn them is more important than the skill sets themselves.
Absolutely. Now, just one very, maybe a very simple question, but basic one. You know, like you, as I know, the KPMG is like many other of your other firms of your status. They are in auditing as well as in consulting. You know, like, they are. I mean, so. How do you, and not only financial consulting as well, not only the strategy or the IT consulting, but also the financial, you know, aspects. How the financial aspects, as you said, compliance is very. So how do you differentiate between the audit part and the other, you know, the consulting part that you said, that compliance and the bucket that you said?
Yeah. Good question, and something that many outside the profession perhaps are not aware. Audit is a statutory requirement. There is a difference between what is a statutory requirement and what is a discretionary requirement. So if I were an enterprise, by mandate, by statute, I need to have somebody to audit my books of accounts and certify that the book of accounts has been in compliance with the lay of the land, with the Companies Act, blah, blah, blah. So as an auditor, all I sign is to say that there are a set of rules and this organization has been in compliance with this, or there has been some exceptions. And this is the explanation that they gave. So it is more a detailed and a thorough work of making sure that some things that has been set has been followed and you are certifying them. So you have a statutory responsibility that you are fulfilling as an auditor. An auditor cannot, by design, be imaginative. An auditor, by design, cannot step outside the brief. They are bound by certain regulations that are given, right? And incidentally, an auditor is equally responsible to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, who is mandating them, who is authorizing them to do it. This is one part of it. Whereas consulting is a little more open. You're not bound by anything. You can literally push the envelope and say, hey, why are you, like, for example, amortizing in this fashion? Can you look at these areas, even in the financial aspects of it? But they can go beyond the accounting and numbers and talk about various other things in terms of what is called as an advice. An advice is not bound by a statute. It's not bound by any rules and regulations, and normally is something that accrues to the organization to grow. So anyway, so there is a fundamental difference between an audit and an advisory function, and hence these two are kept completely separate in all these organizations. Many of the so-called big four consulting, and many of you who are interested in this would know there are strategy consulting firms. Top three consulting firms which are known in this, which is McKinsey, BCG, and Bain, and they don't get into any audit and any of these. They stick very much to only the core consulting part of it, and hence they are smaller in terms of size because they do only that. And then there are these big firms which do auditing, consulting, and they are a bit of an omnibus of sorts for enterprises, which are the four firms like KPMG, PwC, Deloitte, and Ernst & Young at this stage. There used to be 8 firms. When I started my profession, there was Big 8, which became Big 7, which became Big 5. Now we are Big 4. So these firms have an audit division as well as an advisory division. But one trivia for some of you who may not know, McKinsey, who's credited with bringing management consulting to what it is now, was an accountant. He started his profession as a chartered accountant, and then suddenly he realized that being a chartered accountant gives him a lot more insight than what he can do as a statutory auditor, and he found what is called management consulting now.
That's right. I suppose another one that has come up in a big way is coming up, at least in India, that is the BDO, that Belgian, Dutch, and English. It's a combination of that. They are also going quite a bit in India.
Yeah. There are many. There is Grant Thornton, there is BDO, there are many firms that are coming up. Yeah. But the size and nature of these big four firms is a different league. Like, they are much bigger and they are spread out across. And they've been around for many, many years. And it's also not a single firm. They've been merger and conglomeration of many, many firms over many years. KPMG, for example, has been around for close to 200 years. And we have our origins from all over Europe, from US, and there are some firms even in the Asian part, which all came together for KPMG as today to get formed. So there is a bit of legacy that makes these four organizations richer in terms of the content that they bring to table.
Right, that's true. Now, I just wanted to check on behalf of the students, supposing that we are all very keen to learn. So in that process, how would one make oneself fit to be at least do an internship in any of those firms, which you said big four? So,
well, internship, ideally we would love to have all those who are interested to be our interns. But what happens is there is something called bandwidth. So we don't want any interns who come to KPMG to be unguided. So what we do is we go by the guides that we have and the span of control they can have in terms of the number of people that they can take. Okay. And we normally stick to that so that we don't dilute ourselves. Like, there are so many aspirants. So some of the criteria for an internship, there's no specific hard and fast criteria in that sense. But we generally look for people who are, like I said, academically brilliant, because academic excellence is, like I said, a surrogate. It tells us a lot of stuff in terms of how a student is studious, how the student is able to look at various things, which will also get, like I said, management consultant is a lifelong student. So unless the student is done well when he was, designated as a student, how do you expect him to learn when he or she is a management consultant? So academic excellence is clearly required. And also look at communication. How well is that person able to come? Brilliant students, very good researchers, not able to speak a word about what they have done, do not fit management consulting. We need people who can also articulate what they have learned, because that's the most important part of consulting. And like I said, there are other aspects like, how varied are you? Initially, we want the consultants, like I said, to know a lot of things. So how well-rounded is your personality, things of that kind. So these are, like I said, at one level, it looks commonsensical, right? It's not something rocket science that we are looking for, but we definitely are looking for people who have what's probably called the fire in the belly to do something different, to
Exactly.
be out of the box.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. So it has to be a, all-round learner. You know, as a learner, you keep learning and think out of the box. So we had, I don't know a video with me, but I've seen a very funny video, like, you know, out of the box, and one cheetah chasing a deer in a Sahara some area. And suddenly, you know, what happens? The video stopped and asked, what happens to the deer? Someone said it's the cheetah goes and gets hold of the deer. But at the same time, finally we find that one man comes running and takes the deer along with him and goes away running. The cheetah is left. That's what they told us when I was there in the industry, that one of the trainers told us this is what he was thinking out of the box. Everyone thought that the cheetah will either the deer will run away or the cheetah will run away. But that is how.
And it's out of the box, yeah, exactly.
So anyway, now let me, but to my understanding and understanding of many of the students, I suppose, that it's a very what do you call it? Flamboyant, not that way. It's a very high-profile job, you know, consultant, you know. A very high-profile job, you know. You're working with the CEOs and you're working with the top of the companies and the governments. So maybe, well, in the government you're working with secretaries and the ministers. But there is also a factor of risk there.
Oh yeah.
Which I could which I understood while reading some of the reports. So, and those risks are very, it's not a very trivial thing. The risks are very high. So can you give some insight? Not some insight, but there should be quite a good insight, because, you know, like you start and then I'll say maybe some of it.
No, I get the point. So let me put it this way. Where there is risk, there is opportunity. So ironically, if there is no risk, then you actually don't need management consultants. So risk is a part of our journey, and we are existing because there has been some. The bigger the risk, maybe there's bigger an opportunity. So, like for example, there are firms that made a lot of money when the Harshad Mehta scam broke out, because they were able to fix things. When there was Lehman Brothers that fell, there are a lot of consultants who came in and stepped up quick to think, how do you avoid these things later, right? For example, I remember an incident in KPMG where I was involved, where there was a big breach in the technology system in a bank. And the first thing that we did, for one day, we locked ourselves up, you know, a bunch of us, and said, why did this happen? We started thinking for the bank. In less than 24 hours, we could go to the bank and say, guess why your system got, you know, why was there a breach in your system? These are the reasons. And you know what? We can fix this up in the next 15 days and provide you this. And we got a big job. So a management consultant is somebody who finds opportunity in the risk that presents itself. Having said that, because the profession is high-flying, because the profession is glamorous, and you know, it is also something that people look at with a fine-tooth comb. They pay a lot to management consultants, so they better get you know, the best out of it. And when they do it, there are multiple risks that a consultants face. Apart from the reputation risk, which is very big, most of the consultants, at least the big ones, more than any financial risk, like for example, you are supposed to give something and that didn't happen, because of which you are given a financial penalty, that is a risk. But that's nothing, right? I mean, you lose some, you win some. the reputational risk, because sometime later, if somebody were to refer this consultant, they'll say, oh, we worked with them, not good. That reputational risk is very, very big. So but that's not all. The financial risk part, small, reputational risk is really big, but even more bigger is the fiduciary risk and the brand risk. What happens sometimes when you are doing something, you want to be imaginative and you want to give creative solutions. And when you cross the line and get into those areas that are not permissible, which happens sometimes, unfortunately, professionals, very high energy professionals who want to, show to the client that they can come up with innovative solutions, sometimes make the mistake of not understanding the consequences of what happens when a particular advice is given. But the world doesn't take it very kindly, right? Organizations are shut. I belong to an organization, trust me, 88 countries, and it had more than 12,000 people. In 1 week, it was shut. Organization just didn't exist. That is the kind of risk that we carry. Each one of us, we have hours and days of training given to our colleagues who are bright guys. We pick some of the brightest from these schools, from industry, and we give a lot of technical training. But equally important is the risk training that we give. We said, yes, you need to be creative. Yes, you need to come up with innovative solutions, but beware. These are all the things that you should watch out. So a management consultant should have some of these risks that they have at the top of his agenda, because any mistake that he or she does brings the organization down along with him or her. There are multiple incidences where a mistake done by a very junior consultant, no excuse, the brand takes the hit, and sometimes it can be as catastrophic as the organization shutting down to a much smaller financial penalty. But to answer your question, Professor, this profession has some of the highest risk of existence because of the mistakes that we make. So we are very, very conscious about each of. So for example, when we do an engagement, there is a very senior person who will go through everything, who is not even part of the client-facing team. Unless he looks at it, it's not even delivered. We know that it is an additional cost. We know that it is not quote unquote billable in our language, but that is for the risk that we carry.
Exactly. I mean, though you did not name one of the firms who vanished from the face of the earth, is one is Arthur Andersen.
Arthur Andersen used to be this absolutely, not that I was a part of it. I'm proud to be a consultant with Arthur Andersen, which I had my early years. Was phenomenal because of the advice they gave, because of the value that they could add to the client. One small mistake by a partner in Dallas. And what did he do? And it's good to discuss this here because it's all history and many, many years have passed since then. There were some papers from a client office which he accidentally, unfortunately, I don't know whether it is accidental or deliberate, shredded those papers. It was unimportant what was there in the paper, but the regulation says that you should have these papers as and when an authority wants to look at it, but the paper was shredded. And that escalated into such a big issue, incidentally, that gentleman had to commit suicide and the entire organization went out of it. Many years later, Andersen was acquitted, saying there is nothing wrong in what they did. It was accidental, but the firm is not there. So why I'm saying all these things is not to scare you people, but as glamorous as this profession is, there is risk attached to it. But the good news for you all is, over a period of time, there are a lot of lessons. We are good students, as I told you before. So we are learning from our mistakes, and hopefully some of those things don't get repeated.
As professionals, also you not only as a firm but as professionals, certified professionals, also you carry a whole lot of risk. Like in audit practice, if something goes wrong, the chartered accountant firm the Institute of Chartered Accountants, they also, they inflict a heavy penalty or something on the.
It's a huge reputational risk. It's a financial risk, And sometimes it even costs you, because as a professional, you are held responsible for the advice that you're given. Like I said, some of our, the firms in the same category faced a lot of issue because of one scam that happened in India, as you all know. But suffice to say, there is a proverb in Tamil, actually. It says, stones are pelted only in those trees which bear the best fruits. So the risk happens only in place where there is return. All I can tell you is, here is a profession that is most wanted. So it's not very surprising that the risk also gets associated with that profession.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would now go and request students to ask questions, because really do we get a chance to talk to a person who is heading the education, not only in India, but across the Middle East and Asia Pacific and across the world, in fact. So I really do get a chance. So you must make use of the small time that, the time that he has been able, he has agreed to provide to us is precious time. So any question? Hello? Hello? I see, to my understanding, that we have got a whole lot of students who are fit to be consultants from what I learned right now. So Insha, do you have any question? Paramita? Akanksha? Shweta? They're saying this, any other questions?
Either I scared them a lot.
Yeah.
I said I may have scared them a lot.
Yeah. No, nothing to scare. The point is that if you are really with the right attitude, if you work, and if you are a learner, you will not carry that thing. You'll be always successful, whatever profession. So there should not be much of a question. But okay, from my side, just what would be supposing a person in his undergraduate level. So how should he groom himself or herself up in order to be in the consulting arena? So I come from I don't come from, my wife comes from a family of chartered accountants. So generation after generation, they are grooming chartered accountants in the family.
So there is something common between chartered accountants and management consultants. A good chartered accountant is somebody who has seen multiple enterprises. If you go to a good chartered accountant, and you can check at home, unless you've been through the grind, you've visited so many of your clients, big, small, complex, those who are completely squeaky clean, somebody who is doing whatever. Unless you've seen all those things, in spite of all the brilliance, you don't emerge as a great consultant, a great accountant. Similar is management consulting. Some of our best consultants actually put up their hand and say, I want to do these multiple projects. We do projects that are multiple years. So we are now working with the the Ministry of Technical Education in revamping and making a transformation on the ITA ecosystem, which has been around for many years. Not an easy task. So this project is going to take years. So there are consultants who are willing to spend so many months and years because things change very slowly. And we also work with corporates who, before we could submit, okay, I'll tell you about one of my clients with whom I work for many, many years. They say, don't give me any paper deliverable. We don't have time. Just come and implement that. Please tell the people who are responsible for it, the next day it gets implemented. There's no question of giving a paper deliverable, going through it and all the rest of it. That's how fast they are. And incidentally, I'm so proud to say they have grown 18 times since we started to work with them. And that's how fast they grow. Imagine
Great,
a
great.
consultant should be ready to work for 5 years to make a change. But the change that he makes here is going to be so permanent. Generations of youngsters are going to be benefited out of it. Whereas here is a corporate which wastes no time, does multiple turns over it. A good consultant should have a variety of exposure. So I would think for young undergraduate students as well as graduate students, just increase your exposure.
Right.
Make sure that you have a learning from each of the exposure. There is no point if you go. So, I mean, I'm sure you're management students. During my management as a student, there is this professor who I don't want to name. I mean, a great guy. Because of him, I'm who I am. Used to ask us to maintain something called a learning diary. And he was so insistent. He used to, give marks for learning diary. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter whether you did an assignment right, you did it wrong. He said, where is your learning diary? I want to look at what have you learned. To me, that has been the biggest takeaway. There is nothing called bad experience or good experience. It is how much you have learned from that experience that matters. So I think as undergraduate, as students, if you start looking at each of what you're going through and increase the number of touch points, the number of areas that you can get exposed to, and you start learning from them, that is a characteristic and a hallmark of a good consultant.
There are a few questions from the students who have put up in the chat box. So one is how KPMG has tackled the COVID situation in the pandemic, in terms of your operations, in terms of your interaction. How have you been able to do it?
Sure. So incidentally, if I were to tell you that this year we actually did better than what we thought earlier. And in fact, it has been one of the successful years for two reasons. One, we realized our costs have come down dramatically. I used to travel almost 4 to 5 days a week, not a month, a week. And the travel has come to zero. And so what we did, we started pulling out things that were cost elements for it, which actually was a big saving. So our bottom line has been very good, much better than before. The second thing that we did is we started thinking ahead for our clients and started working on what could be the impact of this COVID-19 and related lockdown. What are the things that we can do? So I'm very proud to say the moment these things happen, 3 of our consultants, one partner, offered our services to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare at the center, and we were a part of the core command center there. And then the sheer analytics that we provided, everybody was sitting out of home, so we just picked up on the white spaces of all these people, and about 100 colleagues of ours were working on the various data that came in. So many of you in the first phase would be surprised how the containment areas were predicted before. So there is a lot of science behind it. And I'm so proud to say KPMG was involved in this. We started crunching the data and we were able to provide some insights to the government as to where could be the next containment zone based on various data, an Arogya Setu app and many of those things. Why I'm saying this is what KPMG did was we said, okay, pandemic has hit, lockdown has happened, economy is struggling. How could different sectors be coping up with this? And the papers and thought leadership that we generated during the first 3 months was the highest ever, including something that we did for educational institutions as well. So, Professor, to answer your question, we thought we will do what we do the best, which is start thinking for the client, whether there is an engagement or not. And that has put us in good stead. In various of the sectors, clients appreciated that we thought for them. And towards the end of the year, when things started opening up a bit, we did have some really good engagements, and that has helped us close the year very well.
Right. It was a question from one of our students named Akanksha. Akanksha, I'm sure you have got your answer. And now, another question is, my question is, what can be a future you can see of management consultants in 5 years? I think that you have already answered. The consulting as a practice has been there for quite long time.
Yeah.
So it's only going to grow. I mean, just a little bit.
The future of management consulting, I would say, is earlier people came to management consultants and asked them, can you tell me how things are going to emerge? Can you tell me what are the best practices that others are doing so that I can follow? Now the question is, it is more like, I don't know what is happening. You perhaps know what is happening there. So can you help me, like a peep into the window of what is unknown to me but known to you? Can you help? Right now, the question is more, you perhaps don't know what is happening. I also don't know what is going to happen. But can you help me co-create what is going to happen in future? I'll tell you what. Some of the assignments that we are working today is, what is the future of workforce? What are the future of jobs? Do I know what are the future of jobs? No. But can I have a meaningful way to sit with my client and understand how are the job roles going to change in the, say for example, in oil and gas? What could be the impact of renewables? How could the job roles change? And hence, what should be the changes? So we started looking into, or what is called as crystal ball gazing into things. And many of you management students would know the Johari window, that box where it is unknown to me, unknown to them as well. So we started working on some of those things with the available data. Now, why is it possible now? The amount of data that we have now was never ever there. I don't know, many of you would know the statistic. You know, in the past 2 years or so, we have added as much data that was there in this world, in this universe before that. And we are adding data in that pace. So now we have a lot of pointers towards predicting, towards looking at how things should happen in future. So I would say that is the future of consulting. It's almost like the magic wand where you can say, like, these are the things that are going to change. And the second thing that is happening is, after saying this, we say, come, let's do it together. I'll be with you in making it happen. So I would say these are the things that are changing with management consulting, very different from when I started my career as a management consultant.
Okay, that was. I'll take another question. Was okay. It was some highlights or some points. If someone wants to become a consultant in his or her own right, so what could be? I mean, if you can just throw some light on that. The question is, I would like to highlight. I would like you to highlight some of the points to keep in mind if someone wants to start their own consultancy services.
Okay. To start one's own consultancy service. Okay, that is different. Okay, so one of the biggest things when you want to start a consulting firm, or for that matter, you want to succeed in a consulting firm, is, are you a trusted advisor to your client? Forget the technical advice. Forget the FATAC stuff that you could bring and the technological stuff that you can do. Can your client trust you? The more people who trust you, the better consultant that you are. That essentially means, A, your ability to network, your ability to make sure that people start trusting you. And that trust doesn't come so easily. We're dealing with a bunch of successful, intelligent people. So you can't fake, the trust part of it. So you need to genuinely start thinking for them. You need to genuinely start adding value for them. So one of the phrases that I tell to my young colleagues is, just ask yourself at the end of the day, have I added value today? If your answer is positive, then you're moving in the right direction. And as you grow, am I a trusted advisor to my client? Does the client trust you, even though he or she doesn't even know what you are up to, because they trust that you will give them the right advice? So I would think these are the two things that you should develop as you go. Like, what's the value that you are adding to your client, and are you a trusted advisor to your client? Be it starting your own firm or moving up the ladder in a management consulting firm.
Fine. I think that's all. Another question, but which you have already told us in your talk, that apart from being a learner, what else? So one is
just learning. Learning is one side of the coin. Are you able to communicate that? Is the other side of the coin. I would equally important for a management consultant is whatever you learn, are you able to communicate? And when I say communicate, it's not a simple communication. When you talk to the CEO, you need to know what should you tell him or her. When you are talking to the CIO or a CTO, what should you tell them? What should you tell him or her? When you're talking to the finance folks, what should you be telling? The finance folks are usually interested in details. They would want to know what fails, whereas the CEO doesn't want to know what fails. He wants to know what better can you do. So your ability to communicate, like I said, a written communication, oral. So to me, if not more, equally important would be your ability to communicate, as important as learning.
So, Narayan, it was a wonderful session for our students, of course, and for me as well. I mean, I really learned quite a lot from the talk that you have delivered today. I personally hope to be in touch with you on issues that come up for your advice time to time. And as an institution also, we'd like to have an understanding with you to guide us in our ways in how to bring it up. So thank you so much. And I would, I think we can see, thanks a lot. And we'll be coming up with such sessions more, and we'll be always requesting to spare your valuable time for our students.
Sure, Professor. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. The only part which could have happened better is if I were in person. I really don't like talking to the machine like this when I could be in front of a lot of young faces and meet them. I hope and trust that I'll be in your beautiful campus one of these days and meet all of you some. But thanks so much for giving me this opportunity.
Absolutely. Definitely would love that you come down to a campus and be with us here, with the students and us.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you and good luck for everyone, especially all the very best for those of you who are aspiring to be management consultants. All the best.
Right. Our principal is here. Dr. Dawn. Okay, I don't know where he's okay then. So
thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.